A skilled hiker vanishes in Olympic National Park, only to be found with his neck snapped, eyes blindfolded, and a chilling clue: a second sleeping bag in his tent. The killer left no trace except one strand of hair. This is the unsolved mystery of Jake Anderson. Jake Anderson had always been drawn to solitude, but it wasn't the kind of antisocial withdrawal that concerned his friends and family. At 40, the software engineer from Seattle had discovered something in the wilderness that the bustling tech world couldn't provide: a profound sense of peace that came from being completely alone with nature's raw power and beauty. His colleagues at Microsoft knew him as the guy who disappeared every weekend, trading his ergonomic office chair for a backpack and hiking boots. But Jake wasn't running from anything. He was running toward something. The towering peaks of the Cascades, the misty depths of Olympic's temperate rainforest, the windswept beaches of the Pacific coast, these places filled a void in his soul that no amount of code debugging or software architecture could touch. Jake's approach to hiking bordered on obsessive, but in the best possible way. His gear room in his Capitol Hill apartment looked like an REI showroom, with every piece of equipment meticulously maintained and organized. His hiking journal, a weathered leather-bound book he'd carried for over a decade, contained detailed route descriptions, elevation profiles, weather patterns, and emergency contingencies for dozens of trails throughout Washington state. Friends often joked that Jake planned his hikes with the same methodical precision he brought to software development. Every route was researched months in advance. Every piece of gear was tested and retested. Every trip included backup plans for the backup plans. He carried emergency supplies that could sustain him for twice as long as his planned journey, and he always filed detailed itineraries with his emergency contact, his younger sister, Sarah. This meticulous nature had kept Jake safe through hundreds of solo adventures over the years. He'd weathered unexpected snowstorms, navigated around washed-out bridges, and once spent an unplanned night in a mountain meadow when fog made descent too dangerous. But he'd never, not once, failed to return when expected or check in when planned. Which is why his disappearance on that crisp October morning sent immediate alarm bells ringing through his tight-knit hiking community. Jake had registered for a solo 3-day trek through the Hoh River Valley in Olympic National Park, one of the most pristine and remote sections of Washington's crown jewel. The Hoh River Trail stretched 18 miles into the heart of the park, winding through one of the few remaining temperate rainforests in North America. Ancient Sitka spruces and western hemlocks towered overhead, some over 300 feet tall and nearly 1,000 years old. The forest floor was carpeted in emerald moss, so plush it felt like walking on clouds. The route Jake had chosen was familiar territory. He'd hiked these trails a dozen times before, in every season and weather condition. He knew which creek crossings could be treacherous after heavy rain, which campsites offered the best protection from coastal storms, and which hidden viewpoints provided glimpses of Mount Olympus rising majestically above the tree line. Weather conditions for his October trek were absolutely perfect. The Pacific Northwest's notorious autumn rains had held off, leaving crisp, clear days with temperatures in the comfortable 60s. His gear was, as always, top-notch and recently serviced. His physical condition was excellent. Jake maintained his hiking fitness year-round with regular gym sessions and weekend training hikes. Everything about this trip should have been routine. Jake had planned to spend Thursday night at the Olympus Guard Station, Friday night at the Lewis Meadow Backcountry site, and Saturday night at the 5 Mile Island camp before hiking out Sunday morning. The total distance was manageable, the terrain was familiar, and the weather forecast couldn't have been better. He should have returned to the Hoh River Visitor Center parking lot by Sunday evening at the latest. His plan, documented in his characteristic detail, called for a 4 p.m. return, with a built-in buffer that would have him out by 6 p.m. even if he encountered minor delays. When Monday morning arrived with no word from Jake, his emergency contact, his sister Sarah, knew with absolute certainty that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Sarah Anderson had been fielding emergency calls from her brother's hiking adventures for 15 years, but she'd never actually had to make one. Jake's clockwork reliability meant that his detailed check-in schedule was more of a formality than a necessity. When her phone remained silent past his planned 6 p.m. Sunday return, she felt the first flutter of concern. When Monday morning arrived without word, concern transformed into cold, gripping fear. Her first call was to Olympic National Park's emergency services, where dispatcher Maria Santos took her report with professional calm. Sarah rattled off the details she'd memorized from Jake's itinerary: his planned route, expected return time, vehicle description, and license plate number. Within minutes, rangers at the Hoh River Visitor Center confirmed that Jake's silver Subaru Outback remained in the parking lot where he'd left it Thursday morning. The search and rescue operation launched immediately, following protocols refined through decades of wilderness emergencies in one of America's most challenging national parks. Olympic National Park rangers, aided by volunteer search teams from Seattle Mountain Rescue and Olympic Mountain Rescue, mobilized with the efficiency of a military operation. The searchers faced daunting terrain. The Hoh River Valley stretched deep into the park's interior, where ancient temperate rainforest created a labyrinth of moss-draped trees, fallen logs, and understory so thick that visibility dropped to mere yards in places. The forest seemed designed to swallow sounds, footsteps, and even experienced hikers who knew exactly where they were going. Lead Ranger Marcus Thompson, a 20-year veteran of Olympic search and rescue operations, assembled his team at the visitor center as dawn broke Tuesday morning. The group included 6 park rangers, 12 volunteer search specialists, 4 K-9 units, and 2 paramedics. Each team member carried GPS units, emergency medical supplies, and communication equipment that would keep them connected even in the park's notorious radio dead zones. Thompson divided the searchers into 4 teams, each assigned to specific sections of Jake's planned route. Team Alpha would cover the trail from the visitor center to Olympus Guard Station. Team Bravo would search from the guard station to Lewis Meadow. Team Charlie would handle the Lewis Meadow to 5 Mile Island section. Team Delta, equipped for the most technical terrain, would search the remote areas beyond 5 Mile Island where an injured or disoriented hiker might have wandered. The search began with methodical precision. Teams called Jake's name at regular intervals, their voices echoing through the cathedral-like forest. They examined every creek crossing for signs of slips or falls, every campsite for evidence of unplanned stops, every junction for indications of which direction Jake might have taken. For 2 agonizing days, they found nothing. No abandoned gear along the trail. No signs of distress at any of the established campsites. No broken branches or disturbed earth that might indicate Jake had left the main trail. It was as if he had simply vanished into the ancient forest without leaving so much as a footprint. The search teams covered Jake's entire planned route twice, then expanded their search radius to include alternate trails and unmarked wilderness areas. Helicopter overflights scanned the forest canopy for any glimpse of Jake's distinctive red jacket or the bright blue of his tent. Thermal imaging equipment searched for heat signatures that might indicate a living person or recently used campsite. Still nothing. By Wednesday morning, the search had expanded to include areas well beyond Jake's planned route. The possibility that he had become disoriented and wandered off trail led teams into some of the most remote and challenging terrain in the park. Searchers rappelled into steep ravines, forded swollen creeks, and pushed through nearly impenetrable thickets of devil's club and salmonberry. The weather, which had been Jake's ally during his planned hike, began to turn against the searchers. Clouds rolled in from the Pacific, bringing the kind of steady drizzle that could reduce visibility to near zero and make footing treacherous on the forest's slick surfaces. Time was running out, and everyone knew it. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, everything changed. Search dog Luna, a 5-year-old German Shepherd with an impeccable track record for finding missing persons, was working the area around mile marker 7 with her handler, veteran ranger Tom Martinez. Luna had been part of Olympic's search and rescue team for 3 years, and Martinez had never seen her react with such sudden, intense focus. The dog had been methodically working a grid pattern along established trails when she suddenly froze, her entire body rigid with attention. Her nose lifted to catch a scent that made her vibrate with alertness. Without warning, Luna broke from the trail and plunged into dense undergrowth, pulling Martinez behind her with strength that nearly yanked him off his feet. Martinez, trusting his partner's instincts completely, followed Luna through a maze of fallen logs and shoulder-high ferns. The going was treacherous. The forest floor was slick with moss and hidden obstacles that could turn an ankle or worse. But Luna moved with absolute certainty, her nose locked onto something that drew her deeper into the wilderness. 50 meters from the established trail, in a small clearing hidden by towering Douglas firs and western red cedars, Luna led Martinez to Jake Anderson's final campsite. And there, beside a carefully pitched tent, in a scene that would haunt Martinez for the rest of his career, they found Jake. What Tom Martinez discovered in that hidden clearing would become the subject of countless sleepless nights, professional consultations with colleagues, and ultimately, a decision to transfer to a different department within the National Park Service. In 23 years of search and rescue operations, he had seen drowning victims, fall victims, hypothermia victims, and heart attack victims. He had recovered bodies from cliff tops, river bottoms, and snow caves, but he had never encountered anything quite like the scene that awaited him in Jake Anderson's final campsite. Jake lay on his back, approximately 10 feet from his tent, positioned with an almost ceremonial precision that immediately struck Martinez as unnatural. His arms were placed naturally at his sides, his legs straight and parallel, his hiking boots still laced and positioned as if he had simply decided to lie down for an afternoon nap beneath the towering canopy of ancient trees. There was no indication that Jake had fallen, stumbled, or collapsed. He appeared to have been carefully arranged in this peaceful posture. But Jake Anderson would never rise from this rest. The cause of death was immediately apparent to Martinez, whose search and rescue training included basic medical assessment. Jake's neck showed clear signs of severe trauma. His head sat at an unnatural angle that could only result from complete cervical fracture. The medical examiner would later describe the injury as a clean, complete fracture between the second and third cervical vertebrae, consistent with extreme rotational force applied with considerable precision. What made the scene even more disturbing was the careful attention someone had paid to Jake's appearance after his death. His own flannel shirt, a red and black checkered pattern that Jake had worn on dozens of hiking adventures, had been carefully removed and placed over his eyes and upper face. The shirt wasn't hastily thrown or carelessly positioned. Someone had taken time to fold the fabric neatly, creating what looked almost like a ceremonial mask that covered Jake's eyes, forehead, and the bridge of his nose. The positioning was so deliberate, so ritualistic that Martinez's first instinct was to look around the clearing for signs of whoever had done this. But the forest was silent except for the distant sound of the Hoh River and the occasional call of a Steller's jay high in the canopy. Martinez secured the scene and immediately radioed for backup, his voice carefully controlled despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Within 30 minutes, the small clearing became the center of a major criminal investigation. Detective Sarah Chen from the Washington State Patrol, forensic technicians from the State Crime Lab, and FBI Special Agent Robert Torres all converged on the remote location, transforming the peaceful forest glade into a carefully controlled crime scene. As investigators began their methodical documentation of the site, the truly puzzling aspects of Jake's death became apparent. The scene was pristine in ways that defied explanation. The forest floor around Jake's body showed no signs of struggle, no scuffed earth, no displaced vegetation, no indication that Jake had fought for his life or even been aware of the danger he faced. His expensive hiking gear remained completely untouched. His top-of-the-line Gregory backpack sat beside the tent, every zipper closed, every pocket undisturbed. His wallet, found in the pack's security compartment, contained $347 in cash, multiple credit cards, and his driver's license. His Garmin GPS watch, worth over $600, remained strapped to his left wrist, its battery still showing half charge and its route log intact up until 9:47 p.m. the previous Friday night. Jake's campsite itself was a model of hiking etiquette and leave-no-trace principles. His tent was properly pitched with guy lines secured and vestibule organized. His food was properly stored in a bear canister, positioned the regulation distance from his sleeping area. His camp stove, water filter, and cooking supplies were neatly arranged on a flat rock that served as his outdoor kitchen. Everything suggested a normal evening in the wilderness, the kind of peaceful backcountry experience that Jake had enjoyed hundreds of times before. There was absolutely nothing to indicate that this campsite had become the scene of a calculated murder. But as crime scene technicians continued their methodical processing of every inch of the clearing, they discovered something that transformed this already puzzling case into something far more complex and sinister. Inside Jake's tent, alongside his own sleeping bag and personal gear, investigators found a second sleeping bag. The implications hit everyone at the scene simultaneously. Jake Anderson had registered for a solo hike. His permit clearly stated one person. His detailed hiking itinerary, found in his pack, made no mention of meeting anyone or expecting company. His social media posts from the trailhead showed him alone, grinning at the camera with his characteristic thumbs-up pose. Yet someone had shared his final campsite. Someone had been with him in those last hours, someone who had witnessed his death, or caused it, and then vanished into the vast wilderness of Olympic National Park without leaving a trace. The second sleeping bag was a different brand from Jake's, a different color, and clearly belonged to someone else. It was a high-quality down bag suitable for three-season camping, the kind of gear used by experienced outdoor enthusiasts. More importantly, it had been used recently. Forensic examination would later reveal skin cells, hair follicles, and other biological evidence confirming that someone had slept in it within the past 72 hours. Detective Chen photographed every inch of the sleeping bag, carefully documenting its position within the tent, its relationship to Jake's gear, and any evidence that might reveal the identity of its owner. The bag bore no manufacturer tags, no personalization, no identifying marks that might lead to a purchase record or previous owner. As afternoon shadows began to lengthen in the clearing, investigators faced a chilling realization. Jake Anderson had not died alone in the wilderness. He had died in the presence of someone he trusted enough to share his isolated campsite. someone who had then disappeared into the forest as completely as if they had never existed. The question that would haunt investigators for years was simple. Who was Jake's mysterious companion, and where were they now? The discovery of the second sleeping bag transformed the investigation from a puzzling wilderness death into a complex homicide case that would challenge every assumption investigators held about backcountry safety and human trust. Detective Sarah Chen, who had handled hundreds of cases during her 15-year career with the Washington State Patrol, found herself facing questions that seemed to have no logical answers. Jake Anderson had meticulously planned a solo adventure. His hiking permit, filed weeks in advance with Olympic National Park, clearly specified one person for 3 days. His gear list, documented in characteristic detail in his hiking journal, accounted for exactly one person's supplies: one tent, one sleeping bag, one set of cooking equipment, food calculated for one person's caloric needs over 3 days. Every piece of digital evidence supported his solo intentions. His final social media post, time-stamped at 7:23 a.m. Thursday morning from the Hoh River Visitor Center parking lot, showed Jake standing alone beside his loaded Subaru. The caption read, "3 days of solitude incoming. Can't wait to disconnect and recharge in the Cathedral Forest." Solo advening, Olympic National Park, blessed. The photo showed no indication of expecting company, no hint that he planned to meet anyone on the trail. Yet the evidence inside his tent told a completely different story. The second sleeping bag was positioned on the left side of the tent, parallel to Jake's own bag, with approximately 18 inches of space between them. The kind of respectful distance that indicated planned cohabitation rather than emergency shelter sharing. Both bags showed signs of recent use. Jake's bag contained his usual sleep system: an inflatable pillow, a small stuff sack containing his sleep clothes, and his headlamp positioned for easy nighttime access. The mysterious second sleeping bag contained evidence of equally deliberate preparation. Forensic examination revealed a different brand of inflatable pillow, a separate set of sleep clothes, size medium unisex, and personal hygiene items, including travel-size toothpaste and a compact toothbrush. These weren't the supplies of someone who had stumbled into Jake's campsite seeking emergency shelter. They belonged to someone who had planned to spend the night. FBI Special Agent Robert Torres, called in to assist with the federal jurisdiction aspects of the case, found the sleeping arrangements particularly significant. This suggests a level of trust and familiarity that goes beyond a casual trail encounter, he noted in his preliminary report. The victim allowed someone into his personal space in one of the most vulnerable situations possible, sleeping in a remote wilderness location. This indicates either a pre-existing relationship or someone with exceptional social manipulation skills. The investigation into Jake's personal life intensified as detectives searched for any connection to the mysterious companion. They interviewed his family members, co-workers, hiking buddies, and neighbors. They examined his phone records going back 6 months, looking for any communication that might indicate a planned meeting. They analyzed his email accounts, social media messages, and even his work calendar for signs of a secret relationship or arranged rendezvous. The picture that emerged was of a man whose life was remarkably transparent and uncomplicated. Jake's sister Sarah provided investigators with a detailed overview of his social circle, romantic history, and personal relationships. His most recent serious relationship had ended 8 months earlier with Rebecca Martinez, a fellow software developer who remained on friendly terms with Jake. Rebecca had a solid alibi for the entire weekend in question. She was attending her cousin's wedding in Portland, with dozens of witnesses and photographic evidence of her presence. Jake's hiking companions from the Seattle Mountaineers and other outdoor clubs were systematically interviewed and cleared. His co-workers at Microsoft confirmed that Jake had mentioned his solo camping plans, but had never indicated any intention to meet someone on the trail. His neighbors in Capitol Hill described him as friendly but private, the kind of person who kept regular hours and didn't bring home overnight guests frequently. Every lead resulted in the same frustrating conclusion. Jake Anderson appeared to have lived an open, honest life, with no secrets significant enough to explain the presence of a mysterious companion or the circumstances of his death. The forensic examination of the second sleeping bag provided tantalizing clues, but no definitive answers. The bag was a North Face model, retail value approximately $300, manufactured within the past 2 years based on design features and materials. However, it bore no retailer tags, no warranty cards, no identifying marks that might lead to purchase records. The person who owned it had been careful to remove any traceable elements. More significantly, the sleeping bag had been cleaned recently. So recently that investigators suspected it had been washed specifically to remove evidence. While skin cells and hair follicles were present, confirming recent use, other trace evidence that might normally accumulate in outdoor gear was notably absent. No pet hair, no distinctive pollen that might indicate specific geographic regions, no fabric fibers from other clothing that might provide investigative leads. The cleaning appeared professional and thorough, suggesting either someone with forensic knowledge or extreme caution about leaving trace evidence. Detective Chen noted in her report, "The condition of the sleeping bag suggests premeditation and careful planning. This wasn't a spontaneous encounter that went wrong. Someone prepared extensively for this meeting." As investigators processed Jake's campsite with increasing thoroughness, they discovered other subtle anomalies that supported the theory of a planned encounter. Jake's food supplies, calculated precisely for 3 days of solo hiking, appeared to have been supplemented. His bear canister contained more food than his documented meal plan called for, including items that didn't appear on his typical hiking menu. Energy bars he'd never purchased before, instant coffee when he usually brought tea bags, and a package of freeze-dried lasagna that wasn't his usual brand. The additional food suggested that Jake had either changed his meal planning significantly, or someone else had contributed supplies for their shared adventure. But when investigators checked Jake's credit card and bank records, they found no purchases of the unfamiliar food items in the weeks leading up to his trip. Someone else had brought supplies to their wilderness rendezvous, someone who had planned carefully enough to coordinate food, sleeping arrangements, and what would ultimately become Jake Anderson's final camping experience. The question that tormented investigators was simple. Who had Jake trusted enough to invite into his carefully planned solo adventure? And why had that trust proven fatal? Detective Chen personally supervised the collection and chain of custody for this crucial piece of evidence. The hair was carefully removed using sterile tweezers, placed in a specialized evidence container, and rushed to the Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory in Seattle. For the first time since the investigation began, law enforcement officials felt optimistic about identifying Jake's mysterious companion. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, the state's leading forensic DNA analyst, extracted genetic material from the hare's root with the precision that had made her legendary in law enforcement circles. The extraction process yielded high-quality DNA, a complete profile that would be suitable for comparison against any database in the world. The genetic profile revealed several characteristics about Jake's unknown companion. The DNA indicated a female of likely European ancestry, probably between the ages of 25 and 45 based on certain genetic markers. The hair's natural color and texture patterns suggested someone who spent considerable time outdoors, not surprising given the wilderness setting where it was found. Armed with this complete genetic profile, investigators launched the most comprehensive database search in Washington state history. The DNA was run through CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, which contains genetic profiles from convicted felons across the United States. It was compared against missing persons databases, unsolved case files, and elimination samples from Jake's known associates and family members. The search expanded internationally, with the FBI coordinating comparisons against Interpol databases and genetic profiles from law enforcement agencies in Canada, the United Kingdom, and other countries with sophisticated forensic systems. Investigators even submitted the profile to genealogical databases, hoping to identify distant relatives who might lead them to their target. Every search came back negative. The DNA belonged to someone with no criminal record, no missing person report, no connection to Jake Anderson that anyone could establish, and no traceable genetic relatives in any available database. The mysterious companion had managed to live her life without leaving a single genetic footprint in any law enforcement system. Dr. Rodriguez, who had successfully identified suspects in hundreds of cold cases through DNA analysis, found the complete absence of matches unprecedented. In 30 years of forensic genetics, I've never encountered a profile this clean, she told investigators. It's not unusual to get partial matches or distant relatives that can lead us toward identification. But this profile exists in complete isolation, as if this person has never interacted with any system that collects genetic information. The implications were disturbing. Either Jake's companion had lived an extraordinarily sheltered life with no contact with law enforcement, military service, or even routine medical procedures that might preserve genetic samples, or she had taken deliberate steps to avoid leaving genetic traces in any system. Agent Torres proposed a third, more chilling possibility. The DNA might belong to someone who had deliberately concealed their identity through sophisticated means. We could be dealing with someone who understands forensic countermeasures, he suggested in a classified briefing. Someone who has gone to considerable lengths to remain unidentifiable through traditional investigative methods. The forensic team expanded their analysis beyond basic identification, hoping to extract additional clues from the hair sample. Advanced testing revealed trace elements that provided some insight into the woman's lifestyle and recent activities. Her hair contained elevated levels of certain minerals consistent with drinking water from specific geographic regions, though the patterns were too general to pinpoint a precise location. More intriguingly, the hair contained microscopic traces of specialized outdoor gear materials, fabric fibers from high-end hiking equipment, and synthetic materials used in technical climbing gear. These traces suggested someone with significant outdoor experience and access to expensive, professional-grade equipment. The hair also contained pollen signatures from multiple regions, indicating recent travel through diverse ecosystems. Some pollen was consistent with Olympic National Park's coastal rainforest environment, but other samples suggested exposure to alpine environments, desert regions, and deciduous forests, as if the woman had been traveling extensively through different climates in the weeks before encountering Jake. This person is highly mobile, Dr. Rodriguez concluded. The pollen signatures suggest someone who moves frequently between different geographic regions, possibly as part of their lifestyle or profession. We're not dealing with a local resident who happened to encounter the victim. Investigators used this information to develop a preliminary profile of Jake's mysterious companion. They were looking for a woman in her 20s to 40s, experienced in outdoor activities, well-equipped with high-end gear, and mobile enough to travel extensively between different regions. She was careful enough to avoid leaving genetic traces in any official database and sophisticated enough to clean her equipment thoroughly to minimize forensic evidence. The profile suggested someone with significant outdoor skills, financial resources to support extensive travel and expensive gear, and possibly professional or educational background in areas that would provide knowledge of forensic countermeasures. She might work in law enforcement, private security, outdoor education, or another field that combined wilderness skills with understanding of investigative techniques. But even with this detailed profile, investigators faced a fundamental problem. How do you identify someone who has deliberately avoided leaving any traceable footprint in modern society's interconnected systems? The DNA evidence that should have been their breakthrough instead became another frustrating reminder of how carefully Jake's killer had planned their encounter. The genetic profile sat in databases around the world, waiting for a match that might never come, while somewhere out there, a woman with the skills and knowledge to commit the perfect wilderness murder remained free. The forensic analysis had provided tantalizing clues about Jake's mysterious companion, but it had also revealed something deeply unsettling. They were dealing with someone who understood exactly how to kill without leaving a trail that law enforcement could follow. As weeks turned to months, investigators pursued every conceivable angle. The case file grew thick with interviews, forensic reports, and investigative theories that led nowhere. Theory 1. Random encounter. Perhaps. Jake had encountered another hiker on the trail and invited them to share his campsite, a common courtesy in the hiking community. But this theory crumbled under scrutiny. No other hikers had registered for the area during that time period. No one reported seeing Jake with a companion, and the deliberate nature of his death suggested something far more personal than a random encounter gone wrong. Theory 2. Secret relationship. Investigators theorized that Jake might have been meeting someone secretly, perhaps a romantic interest he hadn't disclosed to family and friends. They examined his phone records, email accounts, and social media with forensic software, looking for any hint of a clandestine relationship. They found nothing. Jake's digital life was as meticulously organized and transparent as his hiking gear. Theory 3. Planned meeting. The precision of Jake's death, combined with the ritualistic placement of the shirt over his eyes, suggested a planned encounter. But planned by whom? And why? Jake had no known enemies, no significant debts, no involvement in anything that might provoke such calculated violence. Every theory hit the same wall. Jake Anderson appeared to have lived an open, honest life, with no secrets dark enough to explain his mysterious death. As the investigation deepened, certain aspects of Jake's death began to disturb even seasoned homicide detectives. The broken neck, while fatal, showed no signs of struggle or defensive wounds. It was as if Jake had allowed it to happen, or hadn't seen it coming from someone he trusted completely. The placement of the shirt over his eyes haunted investigators. It wasn't random or hurried. The fabric had been folded carefully, positioned with almost ceremonial precision. In some cultures, covering a deceased person's eyes is believed to help their spirit find peace. In others, it's meant to prevent the dead from witnessing the identity of their killer. Which interpretation fit Jake Anderson's death? And what did it reveal about his killer's mindset? Dr. Elena Vasquez, a forensic psychologist consulted on the case, offered a chilling assessment. The care taken with the victim's body, the absence of struggle, the ritualistic elements, these suggest someone who knew the victim intimately and felt compelled to perform some kind of ceremony after the killing. This isn't rage or panic. This is someone following a very personal script. Olympic National Park spans nearly 1 million acres of some of the most remote wilderness in the continental United States. Its ancient forests have witnessed countless human dramas over millennia, from Native American ceremonies to pioneer struggles to modern recreational adventures. But the forest that claimed Jake Anderson seemed determined to keep its latest secret. Search teams scoured the area for additional evidence, expanding their search radius to cover dozens of square miles. They found nothing. No abandoned campsites, no discarded gear, no signs that Jake's mysterious companion had ever existed beyond that single strand of hair and the extra sleeping bag. Canine units trained in tracking human scent found Jake's trail leading to his final campsite, and nothing else. It was as if his companion had materialized from thin air, shared his final night, and then dissolved back into the wilderness without leaving so much as a footprint. The forest had swallowed another secret, and it wasn't giving this one back. News of Jake Anderson's mysterious death sent shockwaves through the Pacific Northwest hiking community. Online forums buzzed with theories, warnings, and barely contained fear. If someone as experienced and careful as Jake could meet such a fate, what did that mean for the rest of them? Some hikers began traveling only in groups. Others installed GPS trackers that would alert authorities if they remained stationary too long. A few abandoned wilderness hiking altogether, too shaken by the implications of Jake's death. But perhaps most disturbing were the reports that began filtering in from other hikers. Reports of feeling watched in the deep woods, of glimpsing shadowy figures that vanished when approached, of finding unexplained campsites that appeared abandoned mid-use. Were these simply the product of heightened anxiety and overactive imaginations? Or was Jake Anderson's killer still out there, stalking the trails of Olympic National Park? 5 years have passed since Jake Anderson's body was found in that hidden clearing. His case file remains open, but active investigation has wound down. The mysterious DNA profile sits in databases, waiting for a match that may never come. The second sleeping bag has been processed and reprocessed, yielding no new clues. Jake's sister Sarah has become an advocate for wilderness safety, pushing for better tracking systems and more rigorous permit requirements. But she knows that no amount of bureaucratic procedure would have saved her brother from someone he trusted enough to share his final campsite. The case has spawned documentaries, true crime podcasts, and countless online theories. Amateur sleuths have combed through Jake's life with digital microscopes, searching for the connection that professional investigators missed. They've found nothing. As mist continues to wind through the ancient trees of Olympic National Park, Jake Anderson's story remains a testament to how quickly trust can turn deadly and how easily a person can vanish into the wilderness, leaving behind only questions and fear. Who was Jake's mysterious companion? How did they earn his trust so completely that he invited them to share his isolated campsite? What drove them to kill with such cold precision? And where are they now? The DNA profile waits in databases around the world. The case file remains open. And somewhere in the misty depths of the Pacific Northwest, the forest keeps its darkest secret. But perhaps most chilling of all is this final thought. If Jake Anderson's killer remains free, they've had 5 years to perfect their technique, to find new victims, to continue their deadly ritual in the countless remote corners of our vast wilderness. The next time you're hiking alone in the deep woods and you encounter a friendly stranger who seems to know exactly what to say to earn your trust, remember Jake Anderson. Remember that some secrets are worth killing for, and some people are very, very good at keeping them.